Good morning to everyone. It's really an honor and pleasure to be here in Stanford and this time as well. We heard so much, and we are so grateful for you that you are keeping Baltic issues, Baltic studies on the agenda in this so important institution, academic institution, not for the US, but I think for the whole world. We were asked to say a couple of words introduction about the challenges currently our countries are facing. And would be very strange if I hadn't started with the war in Ukraine. I think this, since even though that war hasn't started a year and a half ago, it hasn't started in February 2022, it started in 2014, the annexation of Crimea and Donbass, Luhansk, so we shouldn't forget that. So Ukraine is fighting already almost for 10 years with Russia. But the February invasion of Russia to Ukraine changed all the dynamics and changed the whole our region and also our countries as well. So since then, I would say that our main challenge in Lithuania as well, what is related with the foreign policy, but also domestic policy and what the people living with, it's the war in Ukraine and how to ensure the full victory of Ukraine in this. Because we do understand, we have everyone say that Ukrainians are fighting for us. They're fighting for our values, our Western values, democracy, human rights, freedoms, how we understand the world, international rules-based international order. And we do understand, and I think in our countries, we feel that, every person feels that, because if Russia is not stopped in Ukraine, if Ukraine doesn't win and Russia doesn't lose, we don't know what would be next. Because we had in 2008 invasion of Georgia, 2014 Crimea, and now 2024, the full-scale military invasion to Ukraine. And not only invasion by traditional military means, but also war crimes, atrocities, what we witness as well in Bushra, in Brin, in many, many places, and which we already reported the thousands of cases, but also much more cases which we don't know, or taking children to Russia and all many issues. So that's why our governments and also the society, I would say, very big attention is what's happening in Ukraine, how we can help Ukraine. First, military to gain back the territories. As well, no victory would be without ensuring accountability. We're very much supporting that with the investigation, not only about war crimes, which has been already started, and many institutions in many countries support that, including Lithuania. We have a number of treaties and already cooperation with Ukraine how to do that, but also the crimes of aggression, which is we see that is a clear manifestation of the crime of aggression, which has to be dealt as well by international tribunal. Then to ensure that international community reacts what happened in Ukraine, and that would be the best deterrence for other countries if they think that would be followed what Russia did. And I think sanctions on Russia as well, we have to keep pressure, not political, but also economic pressure, and to ensure that they won't be capable to restore the military power and to continue such invasions in Ukraine, or also to be ready for other things. I think that is also very much. It was costly to everyone, all the Europeans, and also not only a sanction, but also energy policy. I mean, for the first time, Europe, the whole, decided not to be dependent on the energy resources from Russia, which is so important. And we saw how it costed for the whole Europe in the inflation, and cost of energy was the big challenge for Lithuania and for the rest of Europe. But I think how we survived, I mean, the Europe and our countries as well, shows that we can solve those problems and face them. And I think we are on the right path as well in accommodating the energy challenges for the future. So in Lithuania as well, we were the first European country which completely cut any energy resources from Russia. LNG terminal, we built it already 10 years ago, so it was quite easy to gas, but we also got electricity and oil as well. So that was the big challenge, and we're very proud, and people were so proud of that. So I think, and now would be as well, if we speak about Lithuania, what is challenging, what is waiting. NATO summit, will be hosting NATO summit in July in Vilnius. We're very proud about that and happy about that. First, it's a very symbolic step as well that NATO is gathering all the leaders, 31 NATO member. I hope we'll have 32 by then. We will see how it goes. Also, 4 Indo-Pacific countries will be gathering in Lithuania to discuss on future European transatlantic security, but also to take decisions. So we are looking forward to really strong decisions in a NATO summit, which would be also marking, because I think we shouldn't forget next year would be Washington probably summit, so that should be like opening the path to Washington. So I spoke more about foreign policy. I hope will be, if there are some more questions about national policy, what is that? But I could say that as well, that is nowadays foreign policy, there is so much interrelated or so much discussed internally as well. Lithuania as well was not as along as my also Baltic colleagues, Baltic countries, who were accommodating many Ukrainian refugees, who received, they were received, all of them, they were received in houses, private houses, the people opened their houses, so there was no refugee camps or something. All that was very quickly established centers which could take the refugees. They got jobs, those especially who wanted, the children, all the children wanted were found places at schools. If it's not, was real schools, also by VTC or something. So that is, I think, it's changed as well, and society is open. Some examples: crowdfunding. Just in February, when commemorating a year since the last invasion of Russia to Ukraine, Lithuanian people crowdfunded 15 million euros to buy radars for Ukraine, and the country, which doesn't have even 3 million of populations, they crowdfunded 15 million. So that shows that 2 million were, I think, raised in 1 hour. So that also shows, that's an example, but I think it shows how much the whole society is involved in that, and how much for the society, that's very important. We do understand that that's fight in Ukraine is fight for all our future as well. If we enjoy that so much in human rights, democracies, freedoms. So, and really it's also from the whole society is the wish to have those freedoms and human rights in the region, because without that, we will not be safe either or done. And for this one, so that's why we are so much supporting democracy, but also, and so grateful for the US in its involvement and standing up and forging their global alliances to support Ukraine, but also in supporting us, our defense and security, because we have to for Ukraine, but we also have to ensure deterrence and defense of the NATO countries, and especially Eastern Bloc. So we're working very closely with the US, and having US military, having in Lithuania again for a while, and also to see how we can further strengthen that, because that's, I think, really big. So working. Thank you.
Good morning. No, it's good afternoon. So, thank you very much for having us. I'm happy that we could be all 3 colleagues from Washington here in Stanford. I was having a course back in 1993, but a bit younger, but in the Swedish Foreign Relations Institute, and we had to write a paper on threat assessment. I mean, back, also 30 years ago, so that was a little bit different. But of course, we started with the basics. So the basics, as you know, the 3 fantastic countries of the Baltic Sea, small and beautiful, established in 1918, and we have done our homework. I mean, for security issues back in 20s and 30s. Of course, we lost our independence, unfortunately, to our neighbor. But I think since we regained independence, I think we have done everything what we could do. So we have joined the European Union, we have joined NATO in 2004, you know, we are having also fantastic neighbors in the region. If you look from Latvian perspective, you know, you never can have better Estonians than we have. And the same goes to Lithuanians. Of course, sometimes we do compete. But if we speak about security issues, I think it's that's one of the areas actually where our cooperation since the very beginning of 90s is very good and very active. And as Audrey already mentioned, we have a fantastic region around us that includes Sweden and Finland. Hopefully, both countries Sweden joining NATO, Finland already did. So we hope that the Baltic Sea will become a NATO lake after Vilnius summit. And we have to be also very honest say that Poland, of course, plays a very big role regarding security in our region as well. And then we have Europe, we have European Union, and the part of the European Union countries are also NATO members. And then we have transatlantic community, which include the United States, everything regarding, you know, good cooperation with the country we are residing at the moment. But of course, let's say, especially in Latvia's case, Canada plays a very important role as well as regarding security issues. So, and that's very fantastic and very nice. And then back in 1993, we were writing about new challenges. And those new challenges at that time, it was you know, you have soft security, that was European Union, hard security, that was NATO. Then you finally energy security showed up, environment showed up as well, so it's something new, some new concepts. But I think that we can speak about all those concepts at the moment as well. But I would say that there is only one challenge in the region, and that's what I already started with, that's Russia, which probably will stay our challenge in the nearest future as well, for at least for the Baltic countries. So that's what we have to pay attention. So that's if you look regarding challenges, I think we can overcome everything, but we have to stop war in Ukraine. So that Russia loses and Ukraine wins, so that we can work out, I mean, the security system in Europe for the future as well. So that's probably my short introduction. I mean, so that I think you know very well our region, so that's not a news for you. So I think that one thing I would like to stress is that we need United States and Europe, because we have the same understanding regarding values. We have the same understanding regarding security issues, and of course there are interests on both sides. So whenever you look, either it is Europe and trade and technologies, you look, even if you look, I mean, regarding China. So I think the United States needs us as well for China in order to overcome those challenges. So that I think a good cooperation between let's say transatlantic cooperation, I think plays a positive role in both sides. So I will probably stop here so that Christian can tell everything else what we haven't said. So that's a very good part for you.
Thank you, Maurice, very much. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Professor Weiner, for giving us this opportunity and the Central Center for Russian, Eastern European and Eurasian Studies for inviting us here. This is an extraordinary opportunity for us to talk about our country's priorities, our own country's principles and issues of concern for us. Now, many of the issues and many of the particular emphasis that my colleagues here talked about are actually very similar in the case of Estonia. After all, we share the membership in the European Union and NATO with Latvia and Lithuania. We all are Baltic Sea nations, so we also share the same let's say economic space, and of course also the security space. But nevertheless, we are countries with different historic backgrounds, with different cultural backgrounds, and sometimes there are differences in nuances when it comes to economic and political preferences, both in terms of domestic policies as well as issues that pertain to the international affairs. So I'd like to stop on a few things that seem to be relevant from the point of view of Estonia, and what makes it somewhat easier to frame these couple of points for me right now is the fact that we had general elections, parliamentary elections in Estonia less than 3 months ago, and like in every society, elections is the let's say the catalyst for advancing the discussion about the more relevant issues in the societies. So we now have a parliament, new parliament, but even more importantly, we have a new government that is comprised of three, I would say, liberal-leaning, if not progressive parties, at least according to the let's say American political categorizing, and the main issues that these parties have listed among in their coalition agreement, we have this tradition of negotiating the government coalitions and then stating all the main issues and key policies in the government agreements. The main issues are pertaining to the education. Some of you may know that Estonia is traditionally very well ranked in the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, so-called PISA rankings when it comes to the primary and secondary education. But we see very clearly the need to not only sit on laurels, so to say, but find ways how to keep the education modern, how to make sure that we have good teachers on the future, that our also the university education is competitive, and at the same time also gives the opportunity to study in Estonian and advance Estonian education and culture at the same time, while giving kids and youth good opportunities to succeed in the modern world. A second issue is certainly the green transformation and how to make sure that our energy policies, our environmental policies are in line with the needs of the modern society, that our industry is going to be competitive also in the years to come, rather than just now. We understand very clearly that the time of being a cheap production base for Western companies is well over. It's not something that we can do, and rather Estonia is more and more a service economy that actually benefits from the good environment and smart people that we have, that the region has in general. Thirdly, the government certainly sees the need to make sure that the living quality or the quality of life is good in Estonia, so that it's today and tomorrow a attractive place to not only live, but also for other people to come to work in Estonia, to study in Estonia, to gain new experience from Estonians, and hopefully transfer some experiences and knowledge from the rest of the world to Estonia. And fourth point here, I'll point out the focus on developing something that we call a personalized state, or how to make sure that Estonia has emphasized the personalized digital services to our citizens in the past, that we stay in the forefront of technological advancement, and that we are going to be able to offer the kind of services to our citizens and other residents also in the future, while using all the advances in technology, particularly the artificial intelligence, how to make sure that the public and private sector services are not only available online, but that these services are coming at people just at the moment when they need those services, and can so that citizens and other residents can take full advantage of the technologies and of public and private sector services. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't used the word security yet, but it's only because I'm using it. I'm going to do right now. Actually, normally, just like in the US, in Estonia, the security and defense issues are not in the forefront of the issues that move people in the context of elections. This time we're very different. Just like my colleagues mentioned here, the war in Ukraine, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine is something that we feel to be not just close to us, but something that has potentially existential meaning for not only for Ukrainians, but also all nations. So our government is putting a lot of attention to security and defense. For the next 4 years, there is across the political aisles agreement on spending at least 3% of GDP for military defense. There is also an agreement on strengthening our the energy security, as well as the crisis resilience of the society as a whole. Now, when it comes to war in Ukraine, we are absolutely on the same page. We know that in order to achieve or to emerge from this war with the more hope for European security rather than less, Ukraine has to be successful, has to emerge victorious from this conflict. And in order to do that, we have to not only focus on the military assistance part. Yes, we are doing that as well. But as my colleague said, we have to also work on the sanctions, so that we deny the financial and technological oxygen to the aggressor, if I may say so, and definitely we work on the accountability. We have to make sure that the crimes that have been conducted during this war, starting from the mother of all crimes, the crime of aggression, that these crimes get investigated, prosecuted, and the perpetrators of these crimes get punished. We are not naive. This takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, but this is what we have to do. I would stop here right now, and I am ready to answer any questions.
We open a floor for any questions. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just want to ask about the relations between the Baltic states and the United States. So I just had a quick comment to set up the question. So currently the Baltic states receives, currently the Baltic states receive military support from and enjoys a beneficial relationship with the United States. But the United States is undergoing very rapid demographic change. So by 2045, the United States is no longer going to be a Western nation. Its Western culture will be displaced by some variant of Hispanic culture. And we can see the difference between the two cultures just by observing how the nations of Latin America have responded to the Ukrainian war. So these nations in South America or Latin America refuse to apply economic sanctions against Russia, and they also refuse to give military aid to Ukraine. So here's my question. Have your intelligence agencies studied the impact of American demographic change on relations between the United States and your three nations? And if they have, what do they recommend as far as a response to that change? And if they haven't looked at that change, why haven't they?
You can answer, okay. I wouldn't say the secrets. Maybe I would like to emphasize the first, your question, what the relations is the Baltics and United States as well. So it's now United States for us always is and was, and we are sure that we will remain a strategic partner in the transatlantic, because we do believe in transatlantic linkage and the US leadership. In the US leadership in Europe, ensuring Europe's defense and security to speak about this area, but it's also globally as well. So we see that, for instance, also US attention and action in vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific region, where we also closely cooperate now recently. So and for us, United States as well, very important, not only on security and defense. We can speak now quite long how much we cooperate, how deep and how many troops we have for US troops in Lithuania, or how much this year we're celebrating 30 years of very close cooperation with National Guards in different states between our three countries. So, but it's also economical as well. And I think it's, for instance, in case of Lithuania, the main investor to Lithuania is the United States. The first big companies, like 3 decades ago, came to Lithuania from the United States, and until now it's one of the main. Also, the United States recently, in the recent years, became one of the main partners for trade as well. They're opening the markets and see potential, working on the business delegations here. So, and to be very frank, I don't think we made some kind of investigation or something about the demographic changes in the United States and how that would affect. I think there are many, probably years, studies about how demographics would affect the United States. But I would be doubtful if demographic change would change the core of the United States. The respect for human rights, democracy, and that, I think that was the strength for the Western countries in transatlantic when the US was in the lead. We have the first World War I, World War II, and after that, Cold War and everything can be seen when the United, and even now in Ukraine, when the United States are in the lead, I think the other countries are following. And the last, in the case of Ukraine, because of the United States leadership. So it was not only a strengthened transatlantic link in supporting Ukraine, but there was a global coalition support where also Japan, South Korea, Australia, Canada, and other countries joined that as well in assisting Ukraine. I think that we hope to continue. Of course, there are some challenges and more economics, but also European Union and US is working very closely to see how to tackle those challenges and to ensure that we are partners not only in security and defense, but also ensuring supply chain, global supply chain, and working together and addressing all these issues, which is very crucial.
Yeah, I may say something too. Of course, the United States has throughout its history been in constant development when it comes to the demographic composition, when it comes to also the cultural preferences and the different political changes, even in the past 50, 60 years, when we think of civil rights movement, when we think of the common culture movement, when we think of how the end of Cold War and the rise of China has affected the US, there have always been changes. At the same time, I very strongly believe that it's in a strategic national interest of the US and of Europe to stick together to tackle the global challenges together. We of course are very cognizant of the fact that the US national interests are not only limited to Europe or not only limited to its own vicinity, but the interests are global. At the same time, we know that I believe 48 of 50 American or US states have the most important by volume and are politically the most important trade and investment relationship, not with China or any other region in the world, but with Europe as a whole. And I don't think this is going to be fundamentally changing. It's that there will definitely be incremental changes, but after all, the rise of China and the challenge in the Indo-Pacific have, I would argue, rather increased the need for European and American alignment and cooperation, and hopefully also the understanding of the value of this transatlantic relationship.
Thank you, all three of you, for coming here today. So I have sort of a two-part question which has to do with Baltic security issues and structure, especially the Eastern Baltic region. First of all, as the real threat of Russia, I mean, it's always been a threat of Russia, right? But the activization of this threat through the invasion of Ukraine changed how the three Baltic countries have been dealing with each other on security issues themselves. In other words, have you created new structures, new organizations, new ways of thinking about regional security as a result of this attention to the region? And along with that, the entry of Finland into NATO and now potentially Sweden, has that shifted the way you have thought about regional security? And are there particular organizations, again, I just don't know, organizations or structures of cooperation? I mean, after all, Finland's right across the Gulf from Estonia. I mean, has this shifted how you think about how you defend yourselves and protect your national security interests?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Regarding cooperation between three Baltic states, I guess that it has changed a little bit if you follow the development in Baltics, how it started in the 90s. So the Baltevkol, Baltron, Balt, I mean, all those, formations which we're working together. I mean, so of course it has shifted a little bit because we are part of the NATO at the moment. So that we work together, but we work together within the NATO alliance in this case. So that the planning goes to secure, all those commands. I mean, so that's done a little bit differently, but in many ways we are of course geographically very well connected and at the same geographical place anyway. So that we, especially now in the last moment, and the previous question actually was asking about US support for our military or for security and defense needs. this budget year's year actually will bring about plus $225 million US, I mean, to all three Baltics. But I would probably will say that all this money will stay in the United States. That will never arrive in Latvia. So Latvia it will arrive over Estonia. It will arrive in the form of let's say weapons systems, whatever their name is. So that of course we are buying US equipment in this case. And that's one of the ways actually how we do cooperate. Now we are just signed the last week agreement with Estonia, Latvia and Estonia signed agreement regarding the common procurement of air defense. So that it's, that is the way how we do cooperate. So of course we are having a little bit different also systems. Otherwise, we just Parliament in Latvia decided to restart. I mean. Conscript system, so we had a professional army in Latvia, but because of the war in Ukraine, so we understood that we need, let's say, more people to be ready to fight if it's necessary. So the conscript is back. So starting from this year, I mean, voluntary from next year. So that there are differences and there are, common, but I think we are still trying to find the ways how we can, I mean, work together, and in many cases also, save financial resources as well. But I think we'll much better on military part.
When it comes to the national defense, as Marius mentioned, there is a good track record of cooperation from the mid 1990s even, and I do have some experience from working on the Baltic defense issues, and I would very strongly argue that the defense cooperation between the Baltic countries is the area of cooperation that has the most firm foundation, and also very practical results that we enjoy day in and day out. Traditionally, it was more focused on education, training, and some capability development. But we have moved ahead so that it's very much also about the common procurement, as we I mentioned, of also the more sophisticated systems, and most importantly, also common operational planning and coordination of military C2 command and control structures. Now, we also mentioned the Finnish part. I would argue that this Finland becoming a member of NATO is the single most important addition to the security of northeastern Europe since I don't know when. But this is something that brings us more options and actually requires us now to really work on what we have with Finland in terms of operational planning, in terms of exercising, in terms of integrating the defense of the northeastern flank of NATO. Again, we cannot just sit back and relax, but we have to continue to work, and I believe we are on a good track.
Just a couple of words as well. Very much agree with my Baltic, Latvian, Estonian colleague. I mean, been working on the defense and security issues with, among Baltic states since the very first day, probably of our regaining our independence. So, and we will continue on this. And now, even with the war in Ukraine that increased, deepened, and I think we ensure that we are on the right way, on the right track in deepening this cooperation, as mentioned, common procurements, also air defense. So we're working very much, I think, in the NATO, we are very much together as well, not only exercises, training, but also ensuring that all our Baltic states. What I just wanted maybe to mention, I mean, also our geographical situation is a bit different. If for Estonia, the membership of Finland, and of course for us, very important. We still have in Lithuania, we have Suwalki Gap, which would be Kaliningrad region and Belarus. And having in mind how Belarus was used by Russia invading Ukraine, so that really makes additional challenges, security defense challenges for the Baltic states, but especially also for Lithuania. Having in mind that I think the sandwich between Kaliningrad and Belarus, which just became military almost part of Russia, or at least Russia can militarily very easily. So that's also sometimes maybe defines a bit or a different our means how we want to solve, but in general we are very much together. We are the countries who are paying more to the NATO, more than 2%, 2.5%, moving closer to 3%, investing a lot for our military, preparing new polygons, new ground, new purchasing as well. So I think that's just, it strengthens us as well. And maybe another one thing, membership of Sweden and Finland to NATO doesn't decrease the threat from Russia as well. We shouldn't say, if we're saying that Baltic Sea would become the NATO lake, internal NATO lake, it doesn't mean it's becoming safer, just we have other means as well to addressing those issues. But we have to also be vigilant and work very closely now to do for deter and to defend ourselves.
I will get a question to all of you, but Mr. Ambassador mentioned about this war crimes and the individuals get to be punished and so on. But this recent article was that all the evidence, which is the visual evidence published on YouTube, is raised by artificial intelligence. And so it's getting that the war crimes getting erased, so the evidence actually is diminishing. So I wonder if you, what are your plans? For example, maybe you can take a lead on preserving actually evidence of war crimes and probably work with US, Silicon Valley, because that's mostly Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the AI, these tools actually erasing all that because of the violence or something like that. So probably this should be preserved for the future when actually we come to that. What do you think?
To be very frank, I haven't read that article that was today. There was also some today. No, war crimes are a very serious issue, and many institutions are working on that. International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice, the Council of Europe. There are a number of bilateral, trilateral, and multilateral treaties signed with Ukraine. For instance, we did sign Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania as well on how to help to investigate this criminal crimes. And now our Ukrainian colleague was mentioning 40,000 now already cases, or 80,000, okay, over 80,000 cases. And what does it mean, cases? That means it's not that would be only some video footages or something like that. That means every person who was subject to the war crimes, experienced abuses or was killed or something. So there is a prosecutor or a person who registers that and keeps registration, all the cases, forms the case of that. And there should be also the concrete person who perpetrator who did that. So it's also registered. They are finding that cases as well. And I'm pretty sure that it's also very well registered in all there and kept all these records as well. So I wouldn't say it's not somewhere just on the Facebook or somewhere on the public screen as well. They also very much registers in all the governmental institutions, so in ours or Ukrainians, and of course Ukrainians as well. So I think that, but I mean, good that you raise that. We will see how it's going on. But on the war crimes, now there's already intense international cooperation is going on, and all the institutions are participating. Those institutions, I mean, the courts, international organizations, we have already good records and good experience in that. And what we raise as well, crime of aggression, so that would be another topic. But that's...
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Could you say a little bit about what you expect the impact of all the Russians who have settled in your country since February 24th of last year is going to have on their societies. I've been in both Lithuania and Georgia in the last few months, and they're both, it seems, overrun by Russians, but it seems to me to be a very complicated legacy.
I have to start. To be very frank, during the last maybe I would say 3-4 years, Lithuanian demographic has changed, at least Vilnius or something like that. Yes, indeed, there are more Russian speaking. We can hear in Vilnius, but I think the first group of people who were in Russian speaking, they came from Belarus. When there was election in Belarus and Svetlana Tikhanovskaya won, and I mean, there were all the oppression. So many Belarusians had fled and they found refuge in Lithuania. So there was the first wave of Russian speakers. Now we can hear also more and more Russian language or something. There are sometimes even Ukrainians, especially those came from eastern part of Ukraine. But so even if it's Russian language, and a change, or in the restaurants, you cannot sometimes even speak Lithuanian because the waitress, they're just learning Lithuanian, not something like that. But since the people are refugees or asylum seekers, so it didn't change. There is no any tension or something like that. On the contrary, it's understanding from the people, full support to those people, and just assistance and help. So it was not any risk or something like that. So
I will probably just add, I mean, since February last year, I think all 3 Baltics and I think Poland and the later other country joined. So we are not issuing visas to Russian citizens anymore. So if the Russians are coming as a tourist, they can of course come from Germany or France, somewhere else, but we are not, unfortunately at the moment, we are not very much welcoming Russian tourists into Latvia. So but we have in Latvia, of course, we have our Russian community, I mean, historically, but since the war broke out, we have over 200 journalists, I mean, who has moved from Moscow to Latvia, so working from having a base in Latvia, so starting with Medusa and so we had the issue with TV Rain, but that's in the process of clarification now in the court. So that there are many, let's say, Washington Post is actually writing articles about Russia from Latvia. So that it's the same goes to BBC and Deutsche Welle, so that there are none. So the basis for journalism regarding Russia is not at the moment in Latvia.
Yeah, just a few words from Estonia too. In fact, we are not issuing any tourist visas or regular employment visas or anything to Russian citizens since last spring. And there are multiple reasons behind that. We do have exceptions for family members so that they can move across borders. We do have exceptions for truck drivers and people like that, and certainly we have exceptions for people who have been persecuted or are in a direct risk of being persecuted because of their political beliefs in Russia. But to make one thing clear, we don't consider the intent or interest of avoiding the mobilization as a valid reason for issuing the visa to Russian citizens. However, Estonia has welcomed, just like Latvia and Lithuania, a lot of Ukrainian refugees. In fact, our population has increased by more than 5% because of the influx of Ukrainian refugees. And this, of course, has created a lot of challenges to the society in general. some of the Russian language also on our streets. But I would argue that we have really managed this challenge well thus far. In terms of housing, in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, in terms of helping these people with the psychological issues and so on and so forth.
And just to mention that mobilization was not the issue for all of us as well as to be the reason to have asylum, and that was close for us from our side.
So this is not a political question. Years ago, I was a student at Moscow University, and I made my one single trip to the Baltics, and I don't even remember whether it was Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, but I was very, very interested in the artist Čiurlionis. Do you know him?
That's Lithuanian.
Wonderful, wonderful artist. So I made a trip from Moscow to, so where would it be, in Lithuania or Latvia or Estonia?
In Lithuania.
Lithuania. And I saw Čiurlionis, and he still is one of my favorite painters. So I wanted to thank you for the culture that you have.
Thank you very much for nice words. I hope the possibility to see him here in the United States as well, though there was expositions already some decades ago, but recently his exposition was in London. It was very well reviewed as well. If those who doesn't know, he lived in the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and one of the influences of earliest Kandinsky, they say, or something like that. So that's really worthwhile to see it, his music as well. So thank you.
Could I please ask about the very important, I think, NATO summit in Vilnius, which is 5 or 6 weeks away from it, on the 11th and 12th of July. I wonder whether you could share with us, in as much detail as you can, what the agenda precisely for that summit is going to look like, and also what you, as the 3 Baltic states, would hope to come out of it. I mean, I was just jotting down some of the things that I assume will be on the agenda. It's a huge agenda. Ukraine, of course, whether I can imagine some kind of institutionalization or more of a longevity kind of a feature can be built in. And I have in mind that Norway, I think probably is the only country so far to have committed to a 5-year program of support. So obviously in other aspects of Ukraine, Sweden, I think the new counter-terrorism legislation in Sweden has come into force just today. So hopefully that will remove, maybe will remove the obstacle there. Strengthening forward presence deployments committed to in Madrid, but not really maybe a lot done about it. Strengthening the 2% commitment, Indo-Pacific, which has been mentioned, which remains out of area, I think, for NATO. So there's a big question of what the right strategy is there. So it's a huge agenda. What can you share with us, please, about it, and what you would like to see specifically, if you can come out of the summit? Thank you.
Since I mentioned, maybe my colleagues want to start.
I can say a few words. As you mentioned, the agenda for the summit will be quite substantial. And as it mostly happens, the summits have linkage to the previous ones, and there are work streams that have been carried out between the summits, and now this is the place to assess whether we have achieved some of the expectations. Certainly from Madrid and from even some of the previous summits, the strengthening of the deterrence and defense posture of the alliance is one of the hopefully more important deliverables of the summit. We expect the new set of contingency plans to be approved by the summit, and even though I cannot go into details here, I would just assure all of you that even the philosophy behind the planning or the creation of these plans is a serious step up and something that is a very welcome achievement development in the alliance. Certainly, the Sweden part is important. We still hope that we can actually welcome Sweden as part of the alliance there. I know Turkey has emphasized that whereas they consider the changes in the constitution and the laws of Sweden very positive, that they are going to make their decisions based on the real life implementation of these laws. I have assured them that Swedes are people who tend to deliver. They really, if they promise something, they do it. On Ukraine, there seems to be emerging a wider agreement on the institutional step up. As I mentioned, for years there has been something that is being called NATO-Ukraine Commission. Now there is agreement to transform this into NATO-Ukraine Council. But whereas this is politically and even in terms of practical cooperation between NATO countries and Ukraine, this is a step forward. But I would argue that for anyone who has not been born and grown up in NATO bubble, so to say, this doesn't sound very important. And our countries certainly are advocating some statement from Vilnius that would send a strong signal of NATO's ability and intent and commitment to work together with Ukraine towards implementing the promise that was given to Ukraine in 2008, 15 years ago, when NATO said that one day Ukraine would become a member of NATO. We are not saying we are not talking about welcoming Ukraine as a member in Lithuania, but we are talking about taking steps towards ultimate membership, devising the path towards that with different benchmarks or milestones and so on and so forth. And you mentioned many other issues on the Indo-Pacific part. I know Aura is very passionate about this issue, as am I, but I would like to offer her, as the actual host of the summit, the opportunity to also say a few things and not monopolize the time.
Let's say, yeah, I mean, Christian Secretary President, you mentioned all the priorities. That would be big challenges of all these areas that you mentioned, how deep and how far we can go for the business. I think it's crucial for the coming months to see the final dots for the communique and for the real agreements. And we're very also happy and proud that Indo-Pacific countries are invited to the NATO summit. I think that's very important. Majority of them, they said they would come. So to see how the NATO could cooperate and to see to ensuring a global, non-global, how they ever started. They have a global alliance in supporting Ukraine or supporting now Europe in Ukraine. So I think also it's the time to see how NATO can be more involved in Indo-Pacific area, or how we can ensure more cooperation with our Indo-Pacific partners as well. Crucial issues.
So I will just add, I mean, because they know they don't understand the NATO specialists, you have to leave and eat. I mean, but you have former Deputy Secretary General here in audience, you can always ask. Rose Gottemoller, I mean, how NATO works, I mean, I mean, and she's in Stanford, so I mean, just use your own resources. So.
you very much for coming here today. For very understandable reasons, much of the conversation is focused on Ukraine and security. But I'd like to ask, what are the second and third most important international concerns to Baltic states or your countries individually? And second, what is your view of the United States position on those second and third most important issues?
Well, I will be very brief, and I know that I have given an interview to our newspaper likes. I mean, so the person who interviewed sitting here is also this. I'm still, when somebody asks me actually what we are doing in Washington and our party, drinking champagne and going to receptions and visiting Stanford sometimes. So of course, I'm always saying that it's still security, security, and security, and security in a broader sense. It's not just defense and military cooperation, but I would say that Alder, of course, mentioned, and I'm very happy that Lithuania, so that America is #1 investor in Lithuania. So that's what we are actually looking, to bring more investments also to Latvia. So it's fine if it goes to Estonia and Lithuania as well. If we look from regional perspective, from security perspective, I think that's what we need more. So because when you have money somewhere, you have to defend that money. So that's the idea. So I'm still would say that it's about more than 30 years since we regained independence, but I think it's still one of our priorities. So the security part, but in the broader sense, of course, we have cooperation in energy issues, so we have cooperation in many other issues, but then there are the questions, which is, let's say, trade issues, so it's not bilateral issue anymore, it's European Union and United States, so that as being a part of the European Union, of course, we are playing also, we're one of those 27 voices actually, which conducts, negotiations with the United States regarding, for example, trade and technology issues. So but it's important for us as well, so not speaking about IRA now, so that it's Inflation Reduction Act, so that there are many small pieces and bits and pieces actually which we are trying to figure out. So there are a lot of things going on, but let's say from my personal perspective, it's still security and security.
I certainly do agree with Marius on the central role of security writ large in our international engagements, and very much also what some of these more specific issues are also certainly emphasized the challenge of maintaining the competitive edge of the Western economies, of keeping our societies innovative and making sure that there aren't critical dependencies that can ultimately come and bite us when it comes to technology, when it comes to critical services needed for the day-to-day running of our societies. So these issues are the ones that have a lot of let's say transatlantic components and that also are related to the topics that I mentioned before, the education, how to maintain the high quality and education that is future proof, and the green transformation. We believe that we have to see the green transformation dealing with climate technologies, dealing with environmental technologies, not as a burden and a challenge only, but also as an opportunity to move to the next level of economic competitiveness.
maybe just to wrap up as well, before coming to DC, I was ambassador to United Nations in New York, and I thought that was very intensive work and lots of things, but I was very naive. In DC, it was much more intensive, and I think there was not a week when we didn't have any delegations from the capital. And I think the majority of the members of the cabinet was already in DC as well, talking with the counterparts or something. So that shows how wide is the interest and cooperation between Lithuania and the United States. So a part of the security and defense, of course, is crucial. So economics, we spoke already about the investments. U.S. market for the Lithuanian products is very important. And in some agricultural sector, you have licenses as well recently. So we're very happy that one of those countries leading even in the European Union has many licenses in selling the products. And I don't know how much but sometimes even in Costco or something like that, you can find Lithuanian soups, and especially they're happy that it's ecological products here. Very, very important energy sector. Our LNG terminal gas, it was like up to 70 or 80% comes from the United States. I remember when we just built it at LNG terminal, and there was the first shipment from the US started abroad from LNG gas. So we were fighting that we would build the climate port in Lithuania. So now it's really majority. So we're very happy about that. But the new technologies in this area as well, very crucial. We have very good and deep cooperation with labs, different lab entry, or Denver or some other states, and LA 2000 experience as well. It's very much we're looking to that and working to see how to implement that in Lithuania, or to work on the both technologies of solar panels, all this IT solutions and everything on how chips even interests as well to see that. So we want our the business to business also cooperation working on that, and we will see that's a big also potential to have supply chains to work and to have ensure that the safety of supply chains. That's a huge priority, and we're working also together with all the EU. So, and another thing, I'm very happy to see notice here in Lithuanian community representatives. We have our Lithuanians abroad, the biggest community here is in the United States, mostly probably in everywhere state we have somebody, so it's also lots of work is and cooperation with the Lithuanian community, which is also is that anchor which helps interlink and to have strong links between Lithuania and the United States as well. So, and also university cooperation and studies, so that is so also important.
I just wanted to ask you two questions to that. One is that 2 years ago, more or less, there was a lot of talk here about the Chinese challenge in the Baltic countries. Is it still an issue, and how each of your countries deal with it, with Chinese investment, expectation from China, especially after the war? That is one question. And since we talked about security, the number one security issue and the central issue for the Baltic states is demography, is the demographic decline. I understand that you are professional diplomats and not supposed to comment on domestic issues, but nevertheless, where do you envision immigration policies given the demographic decline that is at this point does not look very well to this?
China was mentioned, probably I have to start answering that question. That's yes, 2 years ago. We had a big challenge with China when our government allowed the Taiwanese trade representation office to be open in Vilnius with the name of Taiwanese. So in the one